Hey guys, welcome back to another live stream by yours truly. You know who this is. Maybe. So yeah, apparently just like I think Friday, yeah, it was Friday, past Friday, this game just came out. I was wondering when this was going to come out. I actually been following this game for a while now, so surprisingly they actually made a sequel to this game. So I'm pretty hyped too, guys. So this is gonna be pretty good. Let's see how crazy she is now. I have no idea how she. Well, I kind of forget how the game ended. I don't know if that was a good ending or not. I don't know if it was bad or not. I think she went to a psychiatrist or something, or I don't know what. I don't know, but yeah, let's just get right into it, because you know people want to watch this. So yeah, let's see. So this is Crimson Gray, something and something, I don't know. Author's note: this game is direct sequel to the original Crimson Gray and will make less sense if you didn't play the first one. So if you guys didn't play the first Crimson Gray game or haven't seen my first walkthrough of it, I suggest you go back and watch it. It's a really good story, so I mean, I'm just saying. Go through the first one. I played the first one. Review the story thus far. Yeah, I'm gonna review the story first. Well, I don't know if I can do that because I got a different ending than I'm sure most people did. I played the first one. The melancholy melody echoed within her. The Lizzy clung to it. There was a time when the melody hadn't been within her, though she preferred not to think about that time. That was before she met him. The melody was sad, but it was his, and so she loved it, and it was certainly better than emptiness. Lizzy had expected that meeting her special person would change everything, and it had, but to her surprise it hadn't happened all at once. Instead, they both grew up and changed, their life together becoming even more wonderful, and her mind growing to encompass it. Yet she had difficult time pinpointing exactly when she had first heard the melody. Who is this? Is the melody supposed to be the guy, the MC? Probably. It would have been romantic if it had appeared at some monumentous occasion, such as when she met him, or when they first made love, or on some future day when they were finally married. But instead it had slowly emerged, whispering at the edges of her mind. Smiling to herself, Lizzy began to contemplate the beginnings of the melody more thoroughly, but at that moment, her world was disrupted by two people approaching her. Who's that? Her eyes flickered over their substanceless bodies. Analyzing everything about them, she distinctly knew the girl's name, had only seen the boy on several occasions, both sophomores like John and her. No physical threats. Lizzy had seen the two of them holding hands on the campus green, and from pupil dilation judged them to be a couple, so unlikely to be a threat to her relationship. But now that they were approaching her, she put on her usual smile and considered them more carefully. The boy was normal enough, but the girl, she was rather pretty and she dressed fairly well. It would take so little for her to try to show off what she had. Oof. Was that a teasing glint in her eyes? Lizzy's smile winded just a bit, and she reclassified the girl as a minor threat. Hey, sorry to interrupt. It's Lizzy, right? Whoa, hold on. So are we playing as like Lizzy herself? That's pretty neat. That's right. Nice to meet you. She responded politely as they introduced themselves, only tracking the information for future reference. Once putting a fairly friendly mask had been difficult for her, an imitation of something she'd only observed. Now she could fake it more easily, mirroring real emotions she had when she was with him. It irritated her to waste her smile on random people who didn't matter, though, so as soon as possible, Lizzy encouraged them to get to the point. We're both trying to start a social thing with other couples on campus. They may be about the same age, but hanging out with a single college kids just isn't the same, you know? We don't have many people yet, so if you have any ideas, we're open to them. Either of you, your husband's name is John, right? Why does she know his name? Lizzy's smile became brittle as she stared over the girl again, searching for the slightest tick that might give her away. She had played it off like she wasn't sure about his name, but she knew. Lizzy was sure of it. Perhaps her analysis of what the threat was wrong. She had dismissed them as a couple but neglected to consider how impure most love was. The girl might ignore her partner and target John. Ooh, bum. Or they could be one of those sexually adventurous couples she'd read about, prowling for other couples. Lizzy had not given a single real thought up to the subject until the moment, when bloody hatred clawed itself out of her soul. Just as she was about to let loose these emotions leak out into her face, Lizzy heard the melody again over the beating of her heart. Sad but calm, she wasn't sure what John would say to her, but the thought of him soothed the growing rage. It was also possible that the girl hadn't wanted to seem too forward, like they had been tracking them. Checking their faces more carefully, Lizzy saw hints of nervousness and forced casualness. She set aside her main concern, flagging it as a potential problem for future consideration. Only a tiny fraction of a second had passed. Lizzy gave them both an apologetic smile. That's very kind of you, but it's hard for us to have much of a social life. We're trying to get our degrees quickly. Oh, that's a shame. The offer is still open, though. Let your husband know, okay? Okay. With that, Lizzy brushed past them as quickly as she could without seeming rude. Despite the potential threat and new source of danger to consider, she also felt a little warm. People thought they were married. They were often together on campus, but Lizzy had thought she restrained the majority of her affection for when they were alone. With warmth drained away slowly as Lizzy went about her business, though, they still weren't married. John was willing to tie the knot, but the thought of it made her heart leap into her chest. It had nothing to do with the idea of being with him. Lizzy betrayed herself for the very thought, and everything to do with how she was sure that the wedding would draw bad luck to them somehow. At first, she hadn't wanted to get married because she was afraid that the official record would draw Koitek down on them somehow. Oof, that would have been really bad. They probably would have sent like the Secret Service or something after her or something. But over 2 years had passed since the violent incident, and it was clear that they had escaped. Enrolling in college hadn't drawn any negative attention either, so it was safe for them to get married. And yet, something would go wrong. Even if they didn't invite anyone, she was sure that someone would ruin their day, and while no one could possibly ruin the relationship, she would only have one wedding day, and she wanted it to be perfect. Suddenly, the people around her were too many, faceless, soulless creatures moving past her indifferently. The drone of their voices drowned out the melody. Stopping in place, Lizzy frowned, struggling to regain it, but his melody had drifted out of her mind, and no amount of thinking about the joy she left with him would bring it back. Checking the time, Lizzy decided that she had enough before she needed to get to class. Normally she preferred to arrive early, but that was no longer her priority. The gentle buzz of class, which she usually found passable if it paled second to being with him, would now only disrupt her. It was difficult to hold herself back, but Lizzy managed to sprint across campus no faster than an ordinary runner. This wasn't the first time, and someone from the track team had already tried to recruit her. That was unacceptable. The track uniforms were flattering, but everyone would be wearing them. Of course, he would come out to events to be supportive, but that meant his eyes would be assaulted by the entire female track team. That could not be allowed. Oh shit. What? It's not... Okay, is it just me or it's the mouse or the cruiser? It's like... leading to something else. John would want... Okay, I can't click on anything else. John would want you to let go, Lizzy. Let it go, Lizzy. Let it go. Oof. I can't click the other ones. Lizzy gripped her forehead with both hands, forcing the thought away. She didn't need to do that anymore. Okay, I just gotta say that the mouse thing, it's forcing you... It's like in Doki Doki, where the mouse slowly is like... going to the worst option ever or whatever, and it's a really nice effect. It shows how much she's trying to restrain herself. Lizzy gripped her forehead with both hands, forcing the thought away. She didn't need to do that anymore. The hollowness within her grew and grew as she left campus. Fortunately, their little apartment was nearby. A split home provided as housing for couples. It had taken serious work to obtain one despite not being married, as the fools in admissions thought there was a chance she and John might break up. Since it was 2:52, John was likely to be reading for a class. He had referenced a paper being due soon, but he never went down to the computer lab until she was in class. After all, he knew that she might need him. His consideration made a warm glow spread through Lizzy, but that wasn't enough. She needed to see him. She had her key in hand as she approached the door, but it was already unlocked. Almost as if he had known, Lizzy threw it open and rushed inside. John sat on the couch. Is this the first time we actually get to see John? Because I don't think in the other game we actually got to see him. John sat on the couch reading a textbook. He looked perfect, and when he glanced up at the noise and saw her there, grasping for breath with her eyes wild, he just gave a comforting smile. Everything all right, Lizzy? Of course it is. I just forgot book I needed for class. What a liar. She swept up to him and wrapped her arms around his shoulders to give him a slow kiss. The sight of him had calmed her considerably, and Lizzy tried to keep the desperation out of the kiss. Yes, this warm intimacy with him was what she needed. There was no sense giving him anything to worry about. She had forced him, her perfect person. Lizzy drew back slightly and rested her forehead against his. Her heart filled with warmth, and its melody strong in her mind once again. I love you, Lizzy. It made her heart flutter just as much as the first time he said it. I love you too, John. More than anything. But as happy as she was to reply, she sensed that something wasn't quite right. There was a bit of a tension in his eyes. Was he carrying some weight? Depression? Had someone done something to him? No. Lizzy realized that wasn't it. He was looking at her with concern, having sensed some part of her needlessness. It was wonderful that he was so attentive, but the idea that she could have caused him any pain broke her heart. Is there anything you want to talk about? Encourage him, bring up something else, ask indirectly. I feel like I should ask indirectly. John, have you ever been approached by a couple? He blinked at that, pulling back to look at her face more clearly. Approached by a couple? I mean, there are people in other apartments, of course. We talk sometimes. But they haven't asked you to do anything social. Not since they asked everyone to that block party. That didn't actually happen. What's this about? It's nothing. Lizzy, is there something you're upset about? I'm just being paranoid. It's nothing to worry about, John. Lizzy kissed him quickly, pleased to see the puzzled look on his face. Of course he would never even dream of doing something that would hurt her, even if he was approached by awful people. Though she longed to stay, she knew that it was better to go to class. Maximizing time in the short term would only hinder their long-term objectives, and she wanted as much of him as she could possibly get. Oh hey, Pepsi for some reason. I don't know, you're weird. That's kind of a weird name. I'm pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. Lizzy headed to their bedroom and traded one special notebook for another, feeling a moment of guilt at the deception. But no, it was better this way. She could have taken the burden onto herself and leave his life lighter. She left with a kiss and a cheery wave, but then crept around the side of the apartment. She had left a little earlier than necessarily to arrive to class on time for this very purpose. From the perfect angle, she could see him through the window, going back to his book, studying so seriously to help him have a better life together. Lizzy didn't try to hide the broad smile on her face, just spent a while watching him. There was less need to watch him now that they were together, but she still enjoyed it. Once she had been observed, the other girl had made the despicable assumption that Lizzy was concerned that he would cheat on her. As if such a thing was possible. Such a thing was possible. As if she needed any reason except to look at him. She did like to observe him sometimes to make sure he wasn't sad again. John's depression was mostly under control now that they have abandoned the awful Koitek medicine, but that she knew it was part of him that needed to be watched. The thought of his inner sadness made Lizzy want to run back inside and kiss him again, forget class, and just spend the time making love until he looked only happy and relaxed. I guess that's one way to do it. Reluctantly, Lizzy pulled herself away and headed towards the lecture hall. John was mentally healthy. He wouldn't forget about her love just because she was away for a little while. She made sure of that. She arrived just a little late, but it was a relaxed university, and no one cared too much. Lizzy carefully set out her books and focused on the lesson. There was worse things than classes. If the universe declared that she couldn't spend every single moment with him, she needed something else to fill her time. With a few exceptions like psychology, classes weren't obnoxious at all. A few even provided knowledge that might have utility in the future. Ooh, key word, guys, utility. And all of it had some utility in getting him closer to their degrees. Once, it had been difficult for Lizzy to think about such long-term plans, but now she could see how both of them earning degrees would help them create the life they wanted. But after that, things became more tangled in her mind. She wanted to be with him. She wanted whatever he wanted. But he was convinced that they should take jobs in the industry, play some small role in preventing pharmaceutical giants like Koitek from doing anything as terrible as they'd done to their old high school. Or the experiment they have done that had led Lizzy existence. The idea that John wanted to make sure that there would never be anyone else like her, that she would be the only one. It made her tingle all over. She didn't think he would approve of such a thought, but she liked it so much that she kept it to herself. But the idea of getting involved with Koitek again, even indirectly, still left her. She wanted what he wanted, of course, a life together. They would have that no matter what they choose. It would be fine. For once, Lizzy set such thoughts aside and focused fully on class. After the lecture finished, Lizzy practically skipped out of the hall. It had been her last class of the day, and John had likely finished the work that he needed to do in the computer lab that left him the rest of the day to themselves. So she wouldn't have to leave him again. Lizzy stopped by the store first, since they were low on food. It hurt her pride as a cook that they had eaten ramen, but money was tight. The least she could do was purchase cheap vegetables and enhance the experience. Well, that's a good idea. I never thought of putting ramen with, like, vegetables and stuff. As she picked out appropriate ones, Lizzy carefully kept track of her spending versus the amount of money she had left. She had aged out of child support. Not that the man who had impregnated her mother, had ever been reliable. which combined with college expenses left her in a more difficult financial situation than ever before in her life. She was careful to add everything up in her head so that she still had enough money to drop by the pharmacy after getting their groceries. There was a small locally owned one where she left comfortable getting John's depression medication. Wait, he needs depression medication? Jesus Christ, dude. Though it seemed to be getting more expensive these days. Of course, she did still own Abby's home in their hometown, but Lizzy wanted to avoid anything to do with it in case Koitek was watching and John would never want to live there anymore. Anyway, perhaps after they graduated, she could sell the house for a down payment on one of their own. That idea gave her a pleasant hum of emotions as she finished her errands and headed back home, still with a spring in her step. But when Lizzy arrived, she found the door locked. She quickly pulled out her key, adding another scratch mark to the lock before successfully opening it. The apartment was empty, briefly making her heart hammer in her chest. There was a note on the table, and she seized it. Eyes flickering over the words, John had gone to the computer lab and said he hoped to be back before she was, but that it might be longer. So she had an explanation. But even as Lizzy breathed a sigh of relief, part of her mind began to churn with other thoughts. What if this was some kind of excuse? Oh, she's doubting him. See, a quick relationship tip for anybody who's in a relationship right now. The moment you doubt your partner or the person you love of any kind, whether you don't trust them anymore, is the moment that your relationship is about to fail. So at this moment, she doubted him. So this could be bad news, guys. But even as Lizzy breathed, okay, so I read that part. No, John would never do such a thing. Never. Lizzy crumbled the paper in her hands, then nervously tried to smooth it out again. John would never betray her. She knew that now. Carried that fact tightly in her heart. But the world was filled with awful people. Terrible women who might try to seduce him, and even if he pushed him away, the idea of one of them laying a hand on him. And what if Koitek got a hold of him somehow? They already tried it once to use him to get to her. She thought they were safe now, but what if she was wrong? Once Lizzy might have flown out of the door and hunted him down until she could be sure that he was safe. Now, she found herself pacing, fingers tangling in her hair as she tried to quiet the thoughts screaming in her head. On a whim, Lizzy grabbed the entire extra spiral notebook she had taken and slapped it down on the table. She began furiously writing everything in her head, letting the thoughts out to give herself a little relief. She'd done this once, before she had met him, just like she'd collected pictures of him. Now that she had the real thing, she neglected such habits, but they had helped her. Perhaps they could again. Finally, she was done. Lizzy took a deep breath and looked over the page of furious scribbling. Some of the thoughts there were embarrassed her. She needed to trust him utterly, but it was good to get them out of her head and onto paper. She felt calm again, and the memory wafted from the deep recess of her soul, the place where she kept him, comforting her even now. Though the page was a mess, she had returned from the edge. Lizzy realized that she was gripping a knife in her other hand. After a pause, she set it down. Though her mind was clear, she still wasn't sure what to do, obviously. John would never cheat on her. He had been very considerate to leave a note, and no doubt that explained the situation. It was also unlikely that anything terrible could have happened to him. She still missed him, though, and wanted to drown the rest of her fears in his presence. It was possible that he would be unhappy if his work had gone on too long, and might be happy to see her. Lizzy closed the notebook and put it with the others, considering that what she should do. Start making dinner. Wait for him. Go meet John at the computer lab. Yeah, otaku lover forever. I'm gonna kill some thoughts. I am the thought destroyer. No, I can't kill thoughts because I am the thought in the story. I'll go meet John at the computer lab. Floating to the old cabinet in the corner of the room, Lizzy opened it and looked over her collection. She selected her axe, of course. Oh shit, damn, that's a little serious, dude. Calm down. And took another knife to the complement the one she... what? An axe and a knife? Jesus Christ. She carried. Yes, this felt better. More certain in what she needed to do now, the stress melted away. Her world narrowed down to a single focus as she left, locked the door, and headed towards the lab. There were other people in her way, but they didn't exist for her. No physical threats, no relevant factors. Eventually, she reached the building that had held the computer lab, where less well-off students like them had to go. She slid around to a side entrance, just in case, then walked inward toward where she hoped he would be. Finally, she spotted him trying to collect his things, but talking to another student. A boy, someone he worked with at the library. Lizzy knew his name, not a threat. She breathed a sigh of relief and leaned back against the wall beside the door into the lab. There was a simple explanation as to why he was late, as she had known there would be. But it was still comforting to watch him. Lizzy slid a hand into her purse and caressed the shaft of her axe while she waited. John finally exited, and though he looked surprised to see her for a moment, after that he smiled. Lizzy, sorry, am I late? No, I just had to see you. She greeted him with a hug and a quick kiss, then pulled back. John, let's go back home. Sure, I'm finished now, but is everything completely alright? You seem more nervous recently. It's just stress, I think. I wish we had more time together. I know. I wish things would be different too. But after the semester... She listened eagerly as he kept talking, soaking up every word. There had been a bit of tension in his voice at the beginning, and she realized guilty that she might be adding to his stress, but it slowly melted away as they spoke. By the time they near the apartment, things were back to normal. Lizzy gave him another smile. I bought some things, but I haven't gotten started. Do you want to make dinner tonight? Sure, that sounds nice. I'm starved, so early is good. John set about helping her with the preparations. They didn't have a lot to do, but even if they were just eating ramen, Lizzy wanted to give it her best. Lizzy set about cutting up the vegetables, removing the bad portions, and reducing the rest to appetizing chunks. Her knife flickered satisfyingly, perfectly balanced for her hand. They might need to make do in many ways, but she had excellent kitchen knives to work with, even when money was tight. He had never suggested selling her knife collection. She would have, though, would he have gladly sold every knife and every single thing she owed for his sake. Knife still flying, Lizzy frowned to herself. No, that wasn't right. She needed her axe and a few knives to defend him properly. Plus, John wouldn't want her to give up everything like that. Considering such warm thoughts, Lizzy flipped her knife around her hand, and a few unnecessary times as she finished cutting. Not the kind of thing she could do in public, but here there was no one to see her but John, and he only smiled to see her enjoying herself. John had started the water boiling, so it was ready as soon as she finished the vegetables. Then there were only a few details to take care of. Eventually, they both sat down together on opposite sides of their small table. It was nothing much, but it was theirs, and that was wonderful. She would have been happy just to watch him eat, but she knew that he loved to talk to her even more. The idea that he wanted her to open herself up to him, even her darkest thoughts, always made her happy, but for today, she had nothing particularly dark on her mind. So, you implied that you got held up in the lab? Mostly it was nothing unusual, just had to answer some questions, but Dan caught me at the end, wanted me to switch shifts at the library. He wanted me to do tonight, which I said it wouldn't work. So we had to do some weird rescheduling. Hasn't that been happening a lot lately? Yeah, and I might be picking up even more shifts. Figure it can't hurt, right? No, but she didn't like him to be away from home more often. Lizzy had to admit that the library job was a good one, allowing him to study or read most of the time, but she still didn't like it. At least she could visit him without it being a hindrance. Why did he feel the need to work so much, though? Well, obviously, you just explained that you were on a budget, right? You could hardly afford actual food, so, I mean, that's self-explanatory there. Lizzy had her own campus job, and the numbers of their debt weren't too awful thanks to scholarships. Would it be better if they could get rid of it? Maybe she could consider going back to the house and selling it after all. Though she considered asking him all those questions, Lizzy decided to hold back. John had many concerns of his own, and added her anxiety to those might make him depressed again. She was stronger, so it was better for her to shoulder the burden. Not really. It's never good to, shoulder such burdens. After dinner, they moved to the couch to work. It was a ratty old thing they've gotten off a curb, but it was fairly soft and it served to hold them. They sat on opposite sides, each with their textbooks, their feet touching in between, just being able to be near him so comfortably. Lizzy slid her feet against his leg and gave him a bright smile when he looked up at her. An old part of her wanted to act immediately, to have sex before the moment could pass. They had been together for 2 years, and moments like this were hardly a rare thing. Slowly her mind had learned that she didn't need to be desperate. The life she wanted with him was filled with moments like this too. Despite her thoughts circling around him, Lizzy finished her work rather quickly. Because of it, in a sense, there was a purpose to so many activities that had once just going through the motions. Lizzy saw he was still busy working and spent a little while admiring him. She loved the look of concentration as he became fully absorbed with something. It was even better when it was directly toward her, but just his concentration was cute too. She could have watched forever, but once she got her fill, Lizzy stood up. She kissed him on the cheek, then headed to the other side of the apartment. They didn't have a lot of space, but there was enough for her to retrieve her axe from the cupboard and experiment with it a little. What? Experiment with what? She hadn't experienced any more physical instability since the incident, leaving her very capable of protecting him, but she needed to be cautious. Though she didn't like to think about it, Lizzy had to admit that there was a small chance that she could hurt John by accident. Even if they never had a serious conflict like with Koitek again, she needed her knives to feel secure. The idea that she might cause the slightest injury by accident. Lizzy practiced carefully, both following through with the force she could muster and bringing the axe to a halt at a moment's notice. The practice was soothing, and Lizzy soon found herself smiling. There had been a time in her life after she found him when it had been possible that she might have harmed him. In order to preserve their love, those thoughts now struck her as alien and horrible. She would never hurt him, never. But that moment she needed to always be prepared. When Lizzy finished, she discovered that John was watching her. She had no doubt that her expression was far from inviting, as she had been imagining cutting down the threats to him, but he was watching her fondly. Lizzy beamed at him and returned her axe to its place. Are you done studying? For tonight, yeah. There's no point in doing more, since I can read it at work tomorrow. Then, she drifted closer to him, smile broadening as she poured over his face. He wasn't too tired. He made a point of saying his work was done, and though he had been watching her with gentle affection, she knew there was more there. Lizzy eagerly slid down into his lap, her body pressed up against his. Soon she could feel the proof of his desire in his pants, and she cooed happily. But though he put his arms around her waist, his eyes still watched her carefully. I know you need to get up early tomorrow, though. Do you want to? Oof. I can't. Ah, it's not letting me click. Don't. Okay. Shit. Do I have to like, I don't know if this is censored or not, because after Steam allowed 18 plus games and nudity and stuff like that in games, now I don't know if I can show this on stream. So I'm gonna have to black it out. I'm gonna pick the first option, obviously. So yeah, bear with me, guys. Yeek. I'm gonna read this. So it's still framed, so it's the same thing. Grinning, Lizzy leaned in closer and kissed him. There had been so many small kisses throughout the day, each adding a little warmth inside her, and now she returned it all, kissing him deeply and passionately. His hands tightened on her waist, holding her a little closer. Most of the hesitance and uncertainty were gone now, since they were familiar with each other's bodies. She had never had trouble needing him too much to be hesitant, but John moved more slowly, and sent a thrill through her every time he touched her confidently. Lizzy bent closer to him, and there was a loud knock on the door. Okay, so it's not gonna go there. Okay, whew, that was close. Her eyes narrowed to slits, and she glared murder toward the entrance. We don't have to Another knock louder. No, ignoring it would not be an option. Lizzy sprang up from his lap and wrenched open the door. The boy on the other side was someone she recognized from one of John's classes. John said he was intelligent and Lizzy didn't find him annoying, so under normal circumstances, he was fine. At the moment, she felt only rage towards him, barely contained within her smile. He was physically fit, but no threat. Her axe could be in her hand before he... Hey, Aaron, what's up? You guys want to check the news? What? Francisca? Is that how you say it? Francisca? Francisca Kelsey is gonna... Seriously, just do it! It took Lizzy an anxious moment to identify the name. A public figure, not someone they knew, related to the pharmaceutical industry. Not an immediate threat, but an annoyance at this moment. The news seemed to matter to John, so he headed to turn it on, the salvage TV in the corner. Lizzy reluctantly acknowledged that Aaron was going to be an entire entity in their life, at least for a little while, and allowed him to step inside. After flipping to the right channel, John watched carefully as the news reported ran. Aaron slouched against a nearby wall, leaving Lizzy to hover behind John. When she heard Koitek's name, she began to pay full attention, soaking up the information. The study they're talking about. What did we miss? They didn't go into detail, but something about how sloppy pharmaceutical experiments used to be. A whole town of people got sick. Bad stuff. Hold on. I need to take a drink. My throat it's dry. Ooh. Lizzy's heart began beating rapidly. Was it possible that the report mentioned her? No, not her specifically. There were privacy concerns, but it might have referenced her experiment. Lizzy's fingers began twitching at her side, which drew John's attention. He frowned a little, then returned to Aaron. How many cases did they talk about? Anything involving specific individuals? Just general information that I heard. Why? Exactly the question that Lizzy had been afraid of, but John didn't seem disturbed. I used to be a part of Paxtine. Was it Paxitine or Paxtine? I think it's Paxtine. I don't know. Part of Paxtine trial that didn't go well. At least for me. I was wondering if I got mentioned. Oh, is that how you got clued into all this? Behind them, Lizzy let her fingers slowly relax. John had been thinking of her, hadn't exposed her to any unnecessary attention. Of course he would. She was awful for doubting him. While she was feeling a warm glow, she missed John's presence. Well, anyway, they only emphasized the biggest cases. Kelsey is trying to prove that the harms are large enough that government policy needs to change. So that was how it connected. Francisca Kelsey, I can't say the last name for some reason, was a researcher who used to work for the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Administration, but left as part of a protest. She had been campaigning for increased powers to regulate pharmaceutical megacorporations since then. Lizzy usually didn't have many opinions about politics, but she approved in this case if it didn't damage Koitek. She had never seen the woman herself, though. Lizzy watched curiously until the news station played a clip of Francisca speaking about the report, then began chewing on one knuckle. Though Francisca appeared serious and dressed professionally, she was too young for Lizzy's taste. Maybe it was fine for John to pay attention to her, since she was doing important work related for both of them, but his attention focusing on anyone else made Lizzy anxious. This is good to know, but why'd you run over here? The congressional debates are going to take forever. Oh, that wasn't the urgent part. They said it earlier. Kelsey is going to be speaking on a speaking tour trying to raise awareness of the issue, but not all the locations are set. We need to get her on campus, man. Ah, I get it. I don't know how much help we can be, though. Well, and I wanted to ask you if you join again. We need more people to lead this if we're going to gain any momentum. John hesitated, looking toward her. His mouth had opened slightly as if to ask something, but he saw the tension in her eyes. Aaron looked back too, but Lizzy had pulled her finger from her mouth and he couldn't see past her smile. It's going to be hard for us to commit to that, I think, but keep us informed about what happens, alright? Alright, I won't press. I'm gonna get Kelsey here, though. Surely we're a big enough campus. While John made small talk and walked Aaron out, Lizzy stayed in front of the television and kept watching the broadcast. Koitek had tried to take John away from her. She had feared 1,000 things, and many times he had calmed her fears, but back then she had been absolutely right. An intellectual part of her knew that it was a huge corporation manufacturing many common drugs. Not all of them were as ill-advised as Paxton. Not every experiment was harmful, and not every employee could be as terrible as Miss Smith. It didn't matter. Lizzy hated all of them. But she couldn't hack apart the entire corporation. So she had no choice but to hope that something could be done. That was why she didn't mind people like Aaron so much. They could be useful. Maybe even this Francisca, but that didn't mean Lizzy wanted her to come here, especially since she might bring attention from Koitek. Was this what she had been fearing? That was why they couldn't get married? Not with an event like this looming in the future. Not while something could go wrong. All too soon, the broadcast moved on to other subjects. Though the pharmaceutical giants were becoming increasingly important to everyday life, they were still usually ignored compared to the banal celebrity news. Lizzy didn't care about that. Since random foolish celebrities wouldn't attract John's eye, she still moved to turn the television off, though. When she turned back, she discovered John watching her with concern. She had been aware that Aaron had left, of course, but that was at the periphery of her thoughts. Only now she'd reflect on the amount of time that had passed. Are you worried about it? I'm just afraid something will happen. Koitek will be watching. John approached and wrapped wrapped his arms around her. Lizzy eagerly let herself rest against his chest. Maybe, but everyone will be watching. Franziska Kelsey is one of their main political opponents, so they have to know that anything around her will be scrutinized. Even if Aaron gets her to come, I'm sure it will pass without incident. I can't read today for some reason. That was logical. It was probably true, and though Lizzy cut and recut his sentence a dozen different ways, she didn't discern any real affection when he spoke the other woman's name. She was just a political figure working on an important cause, no more. She wasn't the threat. I know, but the reminder has me feeling so stressed. I understand. Let's just get some sleep, okay? Too late. Lizzy realized that she had worked against herself. Though she felt anxious and twitchy now, if he had initiated again, she would have happily welcomed it. Sex would have let her take her mind off everything else for a time. But now, he would just worry about that she was only doing it for his sake. And as much as she tried to convince him otherwise, it might trouble him. And that was always made things less enjoyable. Accepting the way things had gone, Lizzy smiled warmly at him and pulled them both toward the bedroom. Please hold me until I fall asleep. As they lay together, Lizzy curled up against his side. She began to feel calm again. Being near him always generated a deep warmth within her, and just laying with his arms like this was peaceful bliss. Maybe John had been right not to have sex that night. Her love with him was depthless, but she wasn't as perfect as he deserved. Sometimes her mind wouldn't cooperate, or her past got in the way. What she needed most now was to lie here with him together. For her, it was just another glorious element of their life together, and as John stroked her hair affectionately, she reminded herself that he was happy just to be like this as well. Smiling, Lizzy drifted to sleep. The warehouse stretched forever in every direction, sterile, white walls yearning toward eternity. In the center of it, they were impossibly tiny, yet they were everything. Her memory of the scene played out again, Miss Smith having both of them trapped, trying to turn them against each other, and realize she had fought back. John had helped her, and trusted her even at her worst, and they had escaped. But this time, instead of us using an injection to cause him pain, Miss Smith began removing her clothes. She cast Lizzy as a mocking smile and then slid into John's lap, pressing herself against his chest. He struggled, but he was bound too tightly to do anything as Lizzy tore out of the dream and found herself bolt upright in bed. She had snugged her knife from its place and held it in front of her, gleaming in the moonlight. It took her a moment to come back to herself, to realize that it had been a dream. John was lying beside her, coming awake as he realized how upset she was. There was no fear in his eyes, but she could see the deep concern there. Lizzy, are you all right? I'm fine, John. Just a bad dream. She gave him a beaming smile and set the knife aside casually, but her acting wasn't good enough. There were still those lines of concerns on his face. It was wonderful that he had come to know her better and better, but at that moment, she couldn't keep herself from being a burden to him. It could be hard to shake all those off. Come here and rest, Lizzy. Though she wanted to pretend that everything was alright, she couldn't resist his soothing voice. Lizzy curled up next to him again, resting her head on his chest. It did feel wonderful, pushing aside the remnants of the dream, but this wasn't how it's supposed to be. She was supposed to protect him. John was the one who was sad, who needed to be protected from the world. He carried so much weight. She couldn't add anything to it. Lizzy bit her lip and squeezed him tighter, wishing she could be perfect. I'm sorry, John. Don't say that. I'm glad I could be here for you. You always are. Come here and try to relax. She snuggled against him, much of her anxiety fading. But what if one day he wasn't there? What if someone took him from her? She would bathe the world in blood, and it would do no good because he would be gone and she would have nothing. Leslie slowly managed to let go of her thoughts and just enjoy his presence, but it took her a very long time to go to sleep. The lecture rolled onward, flowing around the edges of Lizzie's mind. She was absorbing some of the information, but her thoughts were mostly elsewhere. On the page in front of her, increasingly, she'd taken a back corner seat so that it would look like she was fully taking notes. But in fact, she was pouring out her thoughts onto the pages of her spiral notebook. Lizzy paused for a moment, looking over at what she had written recently. It was chaotic, but a familiar chaos. She'd written his name many times, frequently surrounded by hearts. In several places she had drawn little pictures of herself killing Miss Smith. It was playful, though, and writing out her emotions made her feel a little more stable. Thinking of him always made her smile, but Lizzy also stopped to consider John was analytically as she could. I can't read right now. Her mind went over the roll of the images she held of his face, all the smallest changes in his eyes. He was sadder than usual, she realized, perhaps because of the stress of work. Since he was covering more shifts, Lizzy resolved that she could have to try even harder to lift him up, make him as happy as he deserved to be. Pulling herself out of her thoughts, Lizzy set aside the notebook and returned to her real notes. She didn't need to take many, quickly jotting down the key points to catch up to the speaker. When she was done, her mind began to wander again. It seemed that the event planning had gone through. Their local campus activities group had petitioned the right places, so now Francisca Kelsey was going to be speaking in town. That was a good thing theoretically. It would disrupt Koitek, and it would make John happy. Lizzy had read some of her articles to try to vet her, and Francisca seemed intelligent. Her visit would probably give them nice things to talk about. She was married too, and had been for 6 years. Everything was fine, so Lizzy didn't object to them getting a little involved in helping to set up the event. Everything was fine. Lizzy absent-mindedly realized that she was gripping her pen tightly and stabbing it repeatedly onto the side of the notebook, leaving it covered in gouges. After class, Lizzy headed out and started to walk her usual path before she remembered that things had changed. Frowning slightly, she changed her route to head to the administration building instead, where she would be meeting with John. Others would be there as well. The exact purpose of the event was unclear to her. At a minimum, they would gather and receive information about the various activities they would be doing in preparation for the visit and speech. Presumably, after that they would go to do said activities and she could be alone with him. Except that he had expressed interest, which was reasonable. Perhaps they could participate. He had noticed her anxiousness, however, and not committed to do anything beforehand. That was very considerate of him, but made Lizzy vow to do a better job of supporting him. As she entered the building, she saw that a crowd of people had gathered. It appeared to be an ordinary enough college group, likely not concerned, though it was more difficult to evaluate threats in crowds such as this. She searched through the random people in the way, but was unable to find John. Realizing that she was going to be engaged, Lizzy refocused on Aaron, who was coming to greet her. Wait, what? Why are there two? Okay, sure. Aaron and two two women, young, attractive women their age, wearing clothes that were stylish and extremely suggestive. Not physical threats, but potentially. Lizzy gave all of them a brittle smile. Hey Lizzy, good to see you here. Hello. We're just getting organized, but there are a ton of things we need to do. We already printed a bunch of flyers to put up, but we actually got space on one of the big boards, so we need some people to help design a poster. And we all... Where's John? Oh, over in the corner. We were going to organize after the... Thank you. Lizzy left them, though she watched Aaron and the others for a moment longer. Aaron seemed to have noticed she wasn't completely happy, which was a problem. Being herself around John made her sloppy, though Aaron also might be perceptive than average. She headed through the crowd searching for John. Part of her knew that the people were probably decent given their interest. No, too many of them were looking for socialization, or a cause that made them feel good about themselves. There were too many of them to judge, and some could possibly be threats. Oof. Let's see. Investigate everyone in the room. Ignore targets and find John. Defend John with knives. Interrogate Aaron for more information. Retreat. Gather weapons and monitor the situation. Oh yeah, totally, because you know, you totally need to freaking gather weapons. Defend John with knives. That's a little extreme, dude. Oof. I feel like that would bring too much attention to her, though. That's the thing about that. I'll ask Aaron for more information. Let's go the normie routes. I'm actually gonna save this right here. Oof, you know what? I should have saved before then, but oh well. Lizzy's mind raced, considering her best course of action, and then she had heard John's voice. In a rush, she realized how close she had come to making a mistake, one that might have hurt him. She wasn't stable, and thinking about that fact didn't help. Lizzy hurried to track him down and draw on his presence. There he was. Lizzy restrained herself as she simply skipped up to him, taking his arm like any normal girlfriend would do. Her fingers dug into his arm, harder than she intended, as he gave her a look with a hint of concern. Hello, Lizzy. Sorry I'm late. She beamed at Johns to reassure him that everything was alright, then also beamed at the nearby people. Not likely any threats, but she beamed hard at them anyway. I actually just finished organizing all the different tasks. Aaron is better at drawing people together than organizing the details, you know? Ha, that's so true. Some girl laughed unnecessarily loudly at his observation, prompting Lizzy's full attention to zero in on her sight. Slight pupil dilation, no visible flushing, heart rate slightly above average. Was that girl flirting? Was she trying to steal him away from her? But we haven't assigned any tasks yet. What do you think, Lizzy? Do you want to help? Or do we have to do much? Or do we have too much to do at home? It was an obvious lifeline to her if she was too stressed, and Lizzy loved him for it. Of course, she could trust her John. He would always be true to her. Ah, you might have to go? We need all the help we can get. The girl's gaze turned away from John to deliberately a Russ and toward Lizzy. She gave a smile that touched the concerns of her eyes, indicating that it was authentic. But though Lizzy automatically mirrored it, she felt only a cold hollowness. I was actually hoping you could help us out with flyers. I've seen you around campus. You're super fast. What game did she have in mind with such flattery? Lizzy failed to see the advantage the girl gained. but she disliked the situation all the same. Still, there were a wide variety of different tasks available, and not all of them would leave John vulnerable. She had delayed too long in answering, leaving an uncomfortable pause. It had been a very long time since her social skills had failed her like that. Worse, it was causing him stress, which was unacceptable. Lizzy pretended to be looking over the organizational sheet to buy herself a little time. Lizzy? His voice sounded slightly pained, which broke Lizzie's heart. She couldn't add to his depression. She couldn't. The idea of participating wasn't unpleasant, but it would be so much calmer and more wonderful alone at home. Lizzy looked up, smiled, and made her decision. Oof, I should have saved. Dang it, I should have saw this coming. Don't participate. Let him participate, but keep him safe. Take care of it for him. Participate together. How about doing bonding thing? Let's see. Don't participate. Let him participate, but keep him safe. Take care of him. Let's try take care of it for him. Actually, John, let me take care of this for you. Huh? They need someone to run the flyers, right? I can do that quick. You go home and relax. Okay. Thanks for the help. Thanks for helping, Lizzy. He lingered a while longer, but she urged him to head home. John needed some alone time after all, and there had to be moments when they couldn't be together. It might as well be when she needed to do something else. Wow, huh? You're really playing up to the doting wife card, huh? Is there something wrong with that? No, it's your choice. Listen, I'm going to put the plan for the flyers here and let you take care of it, okay? That suited Lizzy just fine, since while the other girl couldn't no longer directly threaten John, she was still an eyesore. Lizzy scanned a list of locations for flyers and nodded to herself. A widespread, even into town, but not too much of an inconvenience. Someone tried to stop her when she picked up all the flyers, something about it being planned for several people, but Lizzy waved them off. Better to do it herself. As she raced around the location, Lizzy tried to enjoy the wind in her hair, and she acknowledged that, and the knowledge that she was making space for John to relax. Yet part of her mind was unsettled, a part of her that hadn't existed before she had come to know him well. Being alone could be good for John, but it could also be depressing. She had a difficult time telling which was which, but she became certain that something was wrong. Though she wanted to abandon the pointless activity, shred all the flyers herself, Lizzy finished distributing them so it wouldn't be a problem. Then she raced home. Just as she had feared, there was a sad look in his eyes. He wasn't as depressed as he had been before, just quietly doing his work, but her heart ached. Lizzy took care of him for the rest of the night until he seemed better, then held him close until he fell asleep. But though it was always peaceful lying next to him, she had a feeling that she would need to spend some time with her notebook soon. So it looks like she's slowly cracking. Alright guys, so I'm gonna end the stream right here. Stay tuned for, I'm actually gonna save this first. Oof. Yes, I wanna save. Let's go to the main menu. Okay boys, that is it for today's stream. Hope you guys enjoyed this. My throat hurts for some reason, I don't know. I guess because of all the reading and stuff like that, I don't know. Oh yeah, Discord. Yeah guys, I have a Discord link in the description of this video. Hopefully you guys can make it and join me and converse and become a social butterfly. Hopefully, I don't know. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the stream. Hope to see you next week for part 2 of Crimson Gray, Dusk and Dawn. I think the title of that is like some foreshadow of some sort, so I don't know. Yeah, thanks to my mod people for helping me out and moderating the chat thing. Lucky and Bree, so. My Vero. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I'm gonna be live streaming tomorrow again, but I'm gonna be doing a different video because different live stream because someone wanted me to play some other game. But yeah, all right, see you guys. Love you guys. Bye bye. Ta ta.